Welcome to day 2 of this realistic reset. And what we are going to talk about today is meal. There are a few things that you need to know about meals, but basically what I find is that most mums don't eat proper meals. And what they do instead is they just snack and graze constantly throughout the day. And many women have a deep sort of belief in their heads, even if it's not really very conscious, that snacking and grazing on very small bits of food is actually the path to weight loss and health, but actually it's not. And they also think it's a bit of a productivity hack, that if I just snack and graze on meals, then I am going to save loads and loads of time on preparing meals and foods and thinking about what to have. If you are someone who thinks that your diet has to be perfect, that you have to make an elaborate salad for lunch and that you need to have a really complicated homemade granola for breakfast or breakfast muffins, and somebody who needs to have a different meal every single night, then absolutely, grazing and snacking is going to save you so much time. But it actually gets in the way massively, first of all, of fat loss, because what ends up happening is we think we're not eating very much. We feel like we're having very small portions, but often we're eating very calorie dense foods and we are consuming far more energy than we actually need to be healthy and to maintain our weight or to lose weight. It also gets in the way of health because we normally end up snacking on things that are convenient. And those things often don't provide us with the nutrition that we need to be our healthiest and to feel our best. So it's often, obvious examples are things like just snacking on biscuits or crackers or crisps or chocolate, because that's what's there, that's what's available, that's just what's easy to grab and go. And that's obviously not going to give us the nutrition that we need. But it's also true of things like nuts and dried fruit, right? Even though they are more nutritious options, they don't give us the overall nutrition that we need. They don't provide hardly any protein, and they also are very, very, very calorie dense. So they make us consume many, many calories, lots of energy, but while not making us full. And often that means that we're also not fueling ourselves properly, and then we have chronically low energy. Just eating meals isn't going to completely change that, but it is an important part of it, making sure that you are eating balanced meals with the right nutrition and eating foods that make you feel full and satisfied so that you're not hungry all the time or just constantly feel like snacking. And the other really common thing with snacking and grazing throughout the day is that many women, when they're at work, are busy and distracted, so they just grab things to just take the edge off their hunger, but the hunger builds up over the course of the day. They never eat properly and feel fully full and satisfied from their meals. And while they're busy and a bit stressed and distracted, that works. But then once they get home with the kids and relax, and well, not relax because being with the kids is stressful, but you're no longer, answering to your boss and working on difficult things all day. So you kind of crash a little bit in the evening. And then what happens is the backlash. You've then got hunger levels that have built up throughout the day. And then that's normally when things fall apart for many, many, many women. Is in the evening, they start to eat a lot of the kids' food. They start to sort of lose track of what they had. They're now not hungry going into dinner, but they have dinner anyway. And now they feel like they've just overdone it in the evening. And tomorrow I just need to keep up that grazing and eating very minimal amounts of food throughout the whole day. Actually, the under-eating is leading to the overeating and setting up this cycle over and over again. So we are going to focus on eating meals. And this is the most important thing that you can do for your health and fitness. It is the most important thing you can do when it comes to weight loss, and it's the groundwork for everything else. Now, there are 3 major parts to this when it comes to like eating meals and getting balanced meals and not snacking in between. Okay, so the first part of this is having regular meal times, what I call anchor points. So regular meal times that you stick to every day or most days, or aim to stick to, okay? Which creates a bit of structure over the course of your day. You don't need to complicate this or reinvent the wheel. If you look at most cultures throughout the history of the world, they pretty much stick to breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner. Pretty much every culture in the world has that basic setup, and there's a reason for it. And we don't eat regular meal times anymore. We just eat whenever we feel like, because freedom is the most important value in the modern world, in the Western world, and we need to be able to eat when I want, whatever I want, and not feel, hemmed in by too much structure, like not eating at lunch because it's lunchtime, but eating when I feel hungry. And there is some truth to that, and there is some logic to that, but we've gone too far that way. We want constant flexibility. We want to always be able to eat whenever we want, and what that ends up meaning in practice is that we just eat at very erratic meal times. We snack constantly, and we don't have any structure to our day, and this, among other things, also messes with our digestion and our circadian rhythm and our mood. So what I suggest is just going back to those basic things, those basic meals: breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner. And times that work for 80% or more of people is 8 a.m., 12, 4 p.m., 8 p.m. It doesn't need to be complicated. Every 4 hours. Aiming to eat around a 2-hour window, and not getting too rigid about this. You don't have to eat at 12 on the dot, but just aiming to eat within that 2-hour window and eating enough to get you through to the next anchor point. If you get off track and you eat at the wrong time, just aim to get back on track and hit your next anchor point. The second part of this is having a template for what a balanced meal looks like. And the best way of approaching it is trying to base all of your meals around protein and fiber whenever possible. Protein should always be the first thing, the thing that you're basing your meal around. If you have a protein yogurt or some chicken or some tuna or a steak, goulash, boiled eggs, scrambled eggs, whatever it is, you want to start with the protein and then add some fiber to it. Some fruit, some vegetables, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do this every single meal, but if you do want to get sufficient protein throughout the day, it is important most of the time to be getting protein at every single one of those anchor points. And if possible, fiber. There are obviously going to be some meals that don't include protein or that don't include fiber, but that's the best starting point. And that will also be the best for, number one, fullness and feeling full and satisfied from your diet, and number two, getting most of the nutrition that you need and keeping calories under control. So it kills lots of birds with one stone. A good portion of protein for most people is between 100 and 200 grams. So if you're talking about chicken or protein yogurt, Greek yogurt, between 1 and 200 grams, or you're probably not going to weigh your eggs, but between 2 and 3 eggs. Or you can think about a portion of protein that is about the size of the palm of your hand. And fiber, any amount of fiber works. I like to have, just 30 or 40 grams of raspberries in my yogurt in the morning, but at least once or twice a day, we want to be trying to get a couple of big handfuls of vegetables or fruit. Lots of proteins have tag-along fats, but if they don't, you can add an amount that's about the size of your thumb, or a teaspoon to a tablespoon of oil, half an avocado, small amount of nuts. You don't need to add this to every single meal, but part of the meal, it's a good idea. And carbohydrates, about the size of your fist, or 100 to 200 grams for most people, for most meals. So a balanced meal contains those components. Not every single meal has to contain all of them, but as I said before, if you start basing your meals off of protein and fiber, you're going to be a long way to health goals, weight loss goals, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, the second part of having a balanced meal is you want to focus on filling foods. And the third part is focusing on whole foods. Okay, so a lot of people focus on what they need to cut out of their diet. So I need to cut out sugar, I need to cut out bread, I need to cut out whatever, gluten. But you'll do much better if you focus on what you need to include and what you need to try to get enough of. So if you're not making an effort, it's very hard to get enough protein and it's very hard to get enough fiber. So instead of focusing on what to cut out, you want to focus on what you need to include and what you need to try and base your diet around. One of the best ways of doing that is just focusing on whole foods. Whole foods are simply foods that are minimally processed and just, as they appear in nature. So great examples of this is any sort of meat like steak, fish, poultry, chicken, anything like that would be considered a whole food because it's just like the pure thing. It might also include fruits and vegetables, right? Those are whole foods. But it also includes some eggs is another good example. But it might also include some minimally processed foods. So things like bread, right? Bread is a processed food, but it is a good thing to include in your diet because it's filling and it's a fairly simple, basic ingredient. It's not like an ultra processed chocolate bar or, deep fried chips or something like that. Yogurt is also a processed food, right? It's also been processed to turn milk into yogurt. There's nothing wrong with that. There are some slightly processed foods or partially processed foods or mildly processed foods, whatever you want to call them. They're actually really good to include in our diet. They're super duper convenient and they're great for us. But making that shift towards if it comes in a packet and it's ready to go and you can just grab it off the shelf and start munching it like a chocolate bar, then it's probably going to be super duper calorie dense, hyper palatable, and not very great for your diet. But having whole foods is not the be all and end all. It's not the only thing that matters. You also want to focus on filling foods. And this is the part that a lot of people miss because they'll have things like dried fruit or any kind of nut. Now, these are whole foods and they're dried fruit, for example, is minimally processed, but they are very, very, very calorie dense. So they aren't great for fat loss. It doesn't mean you can't include them in your diet, but they shouldn't be the main focus. Instead, something like bread, which a lot of women will cut out. They'll eat tons and tons of dried fruit and nuts, but they will cut out bread. But it should kind of be the other way around. Bread is going to be much better for you in terms of losing weight and being healthy because number one, it's very, very filling. Number two, it's very, very convenient. Okay. And when I say filling, I mean that it doesn't give you much energy per 100 grams, or it keeps you quite full per 100 calories, which is not the case for things like dried fruit or granola or health food crackers or dark chocolate. So whole foods on its own is not the answer. Just eat whole foods, but they also include some very calorie dense things that make it really hard to lose weight and feel full. But then there are some diet approaches that just eat filling foods. It's not one or the other. It's the kind of Venn diagram where they cross over. That's where you want to focus most of your efforts. And then having some foods, you will obviously have some foods that are whole foods that aren't that filling, or some filling foods that aren't necessarily whole foods like bread or white rice, which is extremely filling but doesn't really provide you with much nutrition. So it's about finding a balance between those two principles. And then portion sizes. So we talked about what a template for a balanced meal might look like. Protein, fiber, fats, carbs. We talked about having filling foods, whole foods. We also need to think about portion size, and that is going to vary from person to person. So if I've suggested, have Greek yogurt and some fruit for breakfast, and you're like, oh my God, that will never keep me going till lunch, then add something to it. Okay. You could either have twice as much of it, or you could add a slice of toast to it, or a couple more pieces of fruit, whatever's right. You do have to find the right portion for you. If you are a very active person, or if you're a very big person, if you're just 5'11" and weigh 80 kilos, you're going to need more calories than somebody who's much smaller, which is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So be a little bit flexible with this as well. Likewise, if you are only 5 foot tall, you might need smaller portions than what I'm suggesting. You might feel too full on what I'm suggesting. Okay, so this is a basic template, but you are going to have to adjust it to suit you. Okay, so then putting it all together, I'm going to give you the most basic meal plan in the world. And let's just first of all go over your meal plan, which again is in the email that I sent you today. If you haven't signed up for the emails, you can sign up below this podcast episode so that you get the emails as well. But let's run through your basic meal plan. Okay, breakfast, 8 a.m., 200 grams of protein or Greek yogurt, 40 grams of raspberries. I buy frozen raspberries and then I just weigh out 40 grams. I put in a teaspoon of sugar and then I either blast it in the microwave for 30 seconds or I put it in a little saucepan that heats it up. If you heat it up for like 2 minutes, it kind of goes a bit sticky and caramelizes with the sugar and it's absolutely delicious. Yes, eating too much processed sugar is bad for you, but including some of it in your diet is totally fine. I like it a little bit sweet and it makes me enjoy it 10,000 times more. So if you don't like raspberries or if you don't have frozen fruit, you can just have an apple, okay? Have a protein yogurt, Greek yogurt, and an apple or a banana. A protein yogurt or a Greek yogurt and a piece of fruit. Remember, we're eating every 4 hours. This works for most people. 1 slice of any bread. I use a whole wheat bread and it's 50 grams per slice. I put it in the toaster. I scramble 3 eggs, put 1 teaspoon of butter in the pan, scramble your eggs in that, and then 1 teaspoon of butter on the toast. And you need a measuring spoon of butter, not a big heaped one, because that's going to be more like a tablespoon. This will take you 3 minutes to make and then 3 minutes to eat, and then you can get back to work. Afternoon snack, 4 p.m. My favorite thing is smashed raspberry toast at the moment. Piece of toast in the toaster. Yes, we're having bread twice a day, maybe 3 times a day or 4 times a day. Why? Because this is the simplest meal plan in the world and you can make it more complicated than this. We're aiming for the simplest thing that you can execute even on your busiest day, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So I put a piece of toast in the toaster. I heat up 80 grams of raspberries. I drain off the liquid after blasting it in the microwave, smash it all into my toast. I drizzle some honey on it, 10 to 20 grams. You probably want to weigh it because it's very easy to overdo this. And then 100 grams of low-fat cottage cheese on top. And it kind of has this like scone vibe. Oh yeah, and I forgot a dusting of cinnamon underneath the cottage cheese. If you don't like cottage cheese, or if you don't like raspberries, or you don't like bread, you can replace it with something else. Just take my template from before. This could just be a protein yogurt and a piece of fruit, or a piece with a piece of toast, whatever you want. Just take my template for a balanced meal from up above and replace it with anything that you want. I'll also link below a link to my simple meal plan ebook. Or simple meal ideas ebook, and you can take anything from there. But remember, I'm just giving you the simplest plan possible right now. And then for dinner, 8 p.m. cheese toasty. After my kids go to bed, I like to make my cheese toasty. Sometimes I'll have other things. I'll heat up leftovers, whatever. But most nights I just want to have my cheese toasty. 100 grams of bread. I use a white pita bread because I live in Israel and it's delicious. You can have white bread, you can have brown bread, you can have sourdough, it doesn't matter. You put in it 50 grams of full fat cheese. I use the yellow cheese, 27% fat. You can use cheddar or whatever you have in your country. And I stick it in the toaster. And it's bread and melted cheese. It's filling, it's delicious, it's comforting, it's easy. I do not want to be chopping a salad or baking salmon at that time of night. I just want to eat and go to bed. And I just want something super duper simple. I like to eat like a toddler. You can make this more complicated, but if you are like, oh, I can't be bothered to roast potatoes and make salmon and roast vegetables, and then you order in instead, I recommend that you have a simple backup like a cheese toasty, so that you have something that you can do on your most busy days or when you're tired and you just want to go to bed. I also like to add to this half a tin of tuna and chopped onions. It elevates it, get more protein, it's more filling, it's absolutely amazing, but you can do whatever you want. Okay, so at this point you might be thinking, wait, you've got bread like 3 or 4 times a day. How is this healthy? You've got dairy a couple of times a day. There's no salad. What's going on? And the reason why I do it this way is because what most women do is they follow a completely unrealistic, remember this is called a realistic reset. They follow a completely unrealistic meal plan where they have to chop salad at least 3 times a day. And they have to eat 6 times a day, and they have to prepare everything from scratch. And it requires tons and tons of preparation, getting lots of like exotic ingredients in the house. And it's completely unfeasible for the average working woman who has young children. So then what happens is you follow it for a week. It's like hours of work every day. And then you're just like, you have a really busy day at work and you're like, oh, just fuck it. And then you just go back to eating chocolate and crisps because That's the simplest thing, the most convenient thing, and you don't have anything in between the really complex meal plan and the really simple convenience food that is not going to be good for you. So I suggest doing things the other way round. Instead of trying to follow a really complex meal plan, I recommend starting with a really simple meal plan where each meal will take no longer than 3 minutes to prepare and requires really simple basic ingredients that you probably have in your fridge anyway, because if you have small kids, you're going to need to have bread and eggs and cheese. Otherwise, what are you going to feed them? And your meal plan should be based on what you can execute on your hardest day. Because if you do something, I have so many clients who still don't listen to this advice and their meal plan is too complicated because they think it needs to be ideal. And then what ends up happening when they get busy is they can't live up to their own standards, and then they just fall back to the level of their planning, which is, I'll just go back to biscuits and chocolate and crisps. And that isn't going to work. We know that isn't going to work. So what I suggest doing is something in between. Like, it's better than chocolates and crisps, and it might not be as good as like a beautiful salad with 17 different ingredients and monk fruit and all of that kind of stuff. But it's realistic, and it's gonna hit the basic needs for protein, for fiber. It's going to give you nutrition. It's going to be filling. It's mostly whole foods, and it's really, really easy to execute. And if you find yourself at any point being like, oh, this is too complicated, I don't have time to make this, I just need to grab something really quick and easy, and you don't have anything to fall back on, you need to go back to the drawing board and create a more simple plan. Because no matter how busy my day is, I can always go and grab another protein yogurt and some fruit. I can always go and scramble 3 eggs and eat it with a slice of toast. I can always make a cheese toastie before I collapse into bed. Even when I have a super duper busy day, this is still possible for me. And so you need a plan for your busiest day. And then when you have a chill day, when you have a day off work, when you have lots more time, you can make more elaborate foods. But you need to have a basic plan that is, in case of emergency, break glass kind of plan that you can execute on your hardest day, on your busiest day. Then you can add layers of complication from there. Okay, so now that we've talked about all of that, and we've talked about our most simple plan ever and what good meal planning looks like and what structured meal times look like, I want to go over a few caveats. So number one, we've already talked about this. This is not the ideal plan. It's a realistic one. It's one that you can execute on your busiest day. It's not the most perfect balanced diet that is going to give you all the nutrients that you need all the time. Okay, it's just a simple fallback plan. You can make it way better than this. You can add in salads, and I recommend that you do. You can cook chicken in the oven and salmon and roast vegetables, but don't have that as your go-to because you will not be able to do it on super busy days. Done is better than perfect. It's all about just getting it done rather than not doing it because it's not perfect. Number two, what to do if it's not enough food for you. I talked about this before. Different people have different needs, different energy needs, different calorie needs. Some of you might only have like 1,600, 1,700 calories as your maintenance calories. Some of you might have 2,500 calories as your maintenance calories, or you might be breastfeeding and it might be higher than that. If this is not enough food for you because you're a bigger person, because you're more active, you need to add more food, right? It's just a basic plan. You don't need to add another meal. You don't need another snack. You don't need to add anything else more complicated. You just need a slightly bigger portion of what I've already recommended, or just adding something that's missing. So like if just adding some carbs to breakfast, for example, or just making your portion slightly bigger. It's not that hard. Number three, don't be overly rigid about this, okay? So many people get so rigid about these sorts of things. I need to have exactly this, or I need to eat exactly that, or it needs to be exactly at this time, or what happens if I can't eat at exactly 12 o'clock, or what happens if I go out for breakfast at 10 and it messes up with my meal plan. You have to have, we all need both structure and flexibility. If you're just eating at random times every day and you have absolutely no structure to your day, having these anchor points and set meal times can be a real game changer. But don't be too rigid with it. If you find, again, it's within 2 hours, trying to eat within a 2-hour window. So if your anchor point is at 12, trying to eat sometime between 11 and 1 o'clock. If you are starving hungry at 11 and lunch isn't going to be for another hour, either just have your lunch or have a snack to bridge the gap to your lunch, and know that what you had this morning was not enough and you probably need to have a little bit more tomorrow. Okay, this is all about adjusting as you go and figuring out what works for you. But without some basic structure in the first place, you can't figure that out. Most people oscillate and swing really heavily between being really, really, really strict and having loads and loads and loads of structure, or just eating whenever they want, whatever they want, just way too much flexibility. And we need a balance between structure and flexibility. This is one of the many paradoxes about fat loss and about life and about human psychology. Too much structure, too much rigidity isn't good. Too much flexibility also isn't good. We need a balance in between the two. And most of that is about mindset. Most of that is just about sort of freaking out over not being rigid enough or getting too flexible. Number 4, how to build on this over time. As I said before, this is your safety net. This is your, in case of emergency, break glass, what you can do on your busiest day. It doesn't mean you have to eat like this every day. If you have a day that's more chill and you have time to roast vegetables or whatever, then go ahead and do it. If you have time to make a salad, go ahead and have a salad for lunch instead of scrambled eggs on toast. This is just the easy plan, the most simple plan that you can always fall back to when you're like flustered. Oh, I've been working all day and I'm really hungry now. It's 12 o'clock. I'm really hungry. I don't know what to eat. Instead of going to chocolate and crisps, just scramble 3 eggs and have a slice of toast. That's it. You can always make this more elaborate, more fancy, more healthy, and more complicated. But you always have a simpler plan to fall back on when the shit hits the fan. And the final point I want to make, which is also about structure and flexibility, is that we need an 80-20 approach to nutrition. So eating whole foods, eating filling foods, 80% of the time should be your goal. Not 100% of the time. It shouldn't be perfect, but you do need to actually have filling foods, balanced meals, filling foods 80% of the time. And the other 20%, you can have some fun foods, right? You can have, it's not about cutting white sugar out completely. It's not about cutting processed foods out completely. It's not about never eating a chocolate bar again or never eating crisps again, okay? It's just about 80-20. It's about making sure most of the time you're eating those sorts of foods. It's going to help you with weight management, but it's also going to help you with health. And then the other 20% of the time, you can have some fun stuff. That's it. That's your meal plan. Breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack and dinner, protein yogurt and fruit, lunch, scrambled eggs on toast, afternoon snack, smashed raspberry toast, and dinner, a cheese toastie. This is your super simple, mum-friendly, easy meal plan that you can fall back on your busiest days and that you're going to start doing today. You can feel free to add to it, embellish it. If you like to cook, then great. That's awesome. But you've got something really easy to fall back on. This sort of meal plan that is not perfect, but is realistic will get you so far. You will not believe. So crack on with that today. You'll be practicing this over the next few days. And join me tomorrow for day 3, where we talk about calories.